Right, the time on Link FM is exactly 24 and a half minutes to 4 o'clock. And as promised, a very, very special guest in the studio this afternoon, the one and only. Now listen, we've interviewed actors, we've interviewed actresses, satirists, comedians, playwrights, authors, ambassadors. But the person in front of me at the moment is all of those wrapped up in one. Pieter Dirk Eish, welcome back to the Link FM studio.
Thank you.
It's been a long time.
It has.
About 10 years, I'd say.
I think more.
It was in the 90s somewhere.
That feels like a 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Yes.
It's weird when you think about, for instance, for me, the 80s. I matriculated in sort of the mid-80s. And the other day I realized I've been out of school for 30-something years, and I thought, my word, where's the time gone?
I know, it's amazing.
Where has the time gone? Listen, before we talk about why you're in East London,
yes,
let's go back, way back to when you were, let's say, 7 years old.
When I was 7 years old.
Do you remember that far back?
That means it was 1952. It was the Van Riebeeck Festival in Cape Town. We had to draw a picture of Jan van Riebeeck, which I couldn't draw, so I got my mother to draw because I said, you must draw. I never said to her, you're a great concert pianist, you can play Mozart, Beethoven and Bach, you must draw. And my poor ma sat right through the night trying to draw Jan van Riebeeck. And the next day I just took it. I said, oh, not very good. Hell, I was awful when I was 7. You know, you take your parents for granted.
Yep.
I can't remember much. I just was a very decent little kid and growing up in a musical household. My parents were concert pianists, musicians. Mozart was my best friend. I had records, and I had a record player which I was allowed to use, not very loudly because my pa said, "Moenie te hard speel nie." I had to practice the piano because that was what I was supposed to do. I never did that properly, so today I can't play the piano, and they'll say I'll be sorry, and I'm sorry. But 7 was 7, yes.
But 7.
Now, why'd you ask 7?
Because I wanted to know, what did Pieter Dirk Eish want to be when he was 7 years old?
I wasn't Pieter Dirk Eish. I was
Pieter
Eish. Pieter Dirk is my second name.
Okay.
The only reason I put a hyphen between them is when the apartheid government started banning my plays. I thought I'd really make them furious by hyphening my names and giving the echo of the great Voortrekker leaders, Pieter Eish and Dirk Eish.
Of course.
And that's why I love the Voortrekker monument, because daar's eise in die monument. There's nie 'n Foster nie, there's nie 'n Verwoerd nie, en daar's nie 'n Botha nie. Nee.
Are they in the family tree?
No, the Voortrekker monument. No, but the aces are in the whole triptych.
I know, but I mean, those aces, are they part of your family?
Yes, we are all part of the family.
Wonderful.
I keep on meeting people who are saying, ek is jou neef, ek is jou niggie, and I say, yeah, that's fine.
But now listen, come back to 7. What did you want to be one day when you were big?
Okay, I wanted to be a train driver.
Okay.
A stoomtrain, you know. My pa used to always stop at the booms, and we used to wait for the big passenger trains to come past. And the stompneus, locomotief. I love the idea of trains. Now I own a railway station called the Old Darling Station, but I haven't got a train yet. I'm still working at the train. Then I wanted to be a dominee in the NG Kerk because I knew that A, you went to heaven, and B, you got free cars. I don't know, I was wrong on one of those two things. I'm not sure which one that is. And then eventually when I was at school and left school and went to study, I wanted to be a teacher, because to this day I think teachers are the most important energy in the life of young people.
They are.
They really are. And I think each one of us in the world can think of one teacher that gave us the courage to do what we do. And I had a wonderful teacher called Miss Nell, Aloise Nell, who really, truly just, when I said to her in Standard 8, when she said, I was in an Afrikaans school, she said, you must write us a poem. Ek dacht, what is a poem? A poem, gedig? Nee. I said, Miss Nell, I can't. She said, yes, you can. And I was panicking. I said, I can't. She said, Peter, you can do anything. If you believe it and work towards it, you can do anything.
Awesome.
And I think that became the mantra of my life, thanks to her, thanks to that extraordinary encouragement.
The Pieter Dirk Eish today, obviously you didn't turn out to be the train driver. In a sense you are a teacher, but not the way you wanted to be back then, I don't think, in a classroom. Where did all this come from? Where did the career start?
Well, you know, when I was at university, I did my first year to do teaching English, and I studied English and Afrikaans and Nederlands Afrikaans and history and all those things that I wanted to do. The theatre hijacked me. You know, I really believe that you don't really have choice here. Some of my friends said, I'm going to be an actor, and they're not actors. And I really think the theatre looked at me and thought, haha, life imprisonment without trial. I've got ya. And I joined the drama department at UCT, and they didn't train me as an actor because they said I don't have talent. And of course, in those days, you believed people who were older than you.
Yep.
You thought they knew better. Big mistake. But anyway, so I became a stage manager, and that's what I am today. I'm a stage manager who actually acts, and being a stage manager means I understand how to light a show, how to produce a show, how to write a show, how to structure a show, how to market a show. I know how to make dresses, I know how to wear the dresses. So that was the best training. And I keep on saying to young people who want to go into the theatre, don't specialize too soon. Really know your craft, know your everything. I mean, today here we sit with all these computers and SMSs, and how many of us know exactly how to fix things like we used to do in the old days when we had reel-to-reel tape recorders?
Yes.
Remember how we used to splice them together and we knew how the machinery worked?
Remember a pencil and a cassette tape?
Yes, absolutely.
And what you did with them?
Yes, absolutely. I've still got the pencil. I use the pencil. Cassette tape you don't use anymore. The pencil I love. It's my favorite thing.
I bought a cassette tape in the 1980s called, I think it was called Skating on Thin Ice.
Yes, it was the
by
soundtrack
some
to the
South
movie.
African, yes,
That
some
was
South
our
African
movie.
satirist, I know.
And it was a wonderful movie. And it's I've still got it, and we look at it it's now on DVD. I've got it at the Perron. And it's amazing. It hasn't dated. It was 1985. And it was Evita finding oil in her homeland of Bapiti Kosweti. But because oil, then the government in Pretoria said, Mevrou Bezuidenhout, jy moet dadelik daardie land vir ons terugkry, ons wil die olie hê. So Evita's got to go to the president, the black president, who used to be her garden boy, called Pompies, and say to him, Pompies, now listen, I know you're the president, but you must give back this land. Now, we made a mistake. And he says, my dear Mrs. Bezuidenhout, we will give it back with pleasure if your beautiful daughter Billy Jean marries my son Leroy. How are we going to get that? It's illegal. And so that was the story of the movie. And you look at it now, and it's crazy. It's like one of these crazy movies out of Hollywood. And you think, gosh, well, there you are. So there will come a time, maybe next year, because next year I'm 70 years old and Evita is 80 years old, and we might do a big celebration, and I might get that movie out on TV so everybody can see it.
Will you actually start talking to each other?
I don't try that, Evita, the thing about Evita, the character, is she's been around since the 30s, since 1980 as a character. In the beginning, she was pretty broadly, so big hat and glasses and a little bikkie, seentjie trek aan soos meisiekind, and because that was enough to shock everybody, daar's hom af, voorag hom af, But then eventually people start asking questions about her, where does she come from? What is her surname? What does she stand for? Why is she... And slowly I started creating a life for her by doing research and seeing how she fits in. Now I don't have to, I do 2% of my time I spend on her, mainly to diet. I diet for this woman that doesn't exist. Because, she's got to be so real that the women recognize the woman and the men forget the man.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's no point.
Yeah.
I don't do her to demean women. I love women. I respect women. I think what women do in this world makes it possible for men to smile and pretend they did it. You know what I'm saying?
Very true.
Or as they say in the court case on TV, let me put it to you. Let me put it to you.
Where have we heard that lately?
Yeah, where have we heard that? So Evita's really, truly been a very interesting character. And frankly, yes, she's my job has been quite successful when I realized that she is much more famous than me. And then people talk about her in the third person. And what's it, Evita gesien?
Ja.
Daar aan die kant. Ja. She's now a member of the ANC. And they deserve her. And I get messages from friends of mine in Lutuli. I say, you won't believe this, but we've seen her walking up the passage. I said, yes. I said, just because she doesn't exist doesn't mean she's not real.
Very true. Let's hop through out here. We were chatting the other day. We chatted to a well-known South African photographer from the apartheid days, from way back when. And I was showing her photographs of the apartheid days, the old bus stops and all the disgusting stuff we used to have that we grew up with, or that I grew up with. And you lived through as well. And Khuma doesn't know about that. She's never seen that. It's foreign to her. What can you say to her as a young person today, a young South African, about, let's say, the 80s, when Evita was coming to the fore?
If you have an interest in time, I think look back, not because of your future, but because your parents went through it. I mean, that's the most important thing. And most parents who went through it those days really don't want to remember. It was so awful and so demeaning. And they feel embarrassed that they didn't fight it. And I feel such compassion for people who really say, I really don't want to. That's why they come to my show with their kids, because there's humor. Not because it's funny. Apartheid was never funny, but the hypocrisy and the lies, and being part of a Christian society that pretended that this was the right thing to do because God was a white Afrikaner. You know, and that was really something that I had to work through in my whole life. But also, as a young South African, first of all, register so that you can vote because it's your future.
Done.
Good. And really, truly, I can promise you, apartheid will never, ever come back again under the same name. But do not underestimate the inventiveness of bad politics.
Yeah.
It will be back. It made money for a political elite then. It'll make money for a political elite now. It won't be the segregation of color, because we've got the T-shirt. It'll be the segregation of language, of education, of tradition, of toll gates. I mean, there are so many ways that already in our structure of democracy, an elite is rising, not through talent, not through anything other than corruption. And that's a very frightening thing, because that struggle lies ahead. So I say to the young people, don't leave your freedom lying around. People will steal it. You fight for your freedom every day, for the freedom to be free tomorrow.
Yeah. Elections coming up next month. How do you know who to vote for?
You know, you don't know who to vote for because they've come up with new tricks every second day. But my point is, as citizens in a democracy, it is our job to do our homework. I do this in the show with Evita. Evita has one sketch where she says she had to go to Taine's because there's a cupboard that wouldn't open in the president's office, and she was very worried because it could be the arms deal that's been locked away. But she found out that it's just been the wood of the cupboard is swollen, and they pulled it open, and 1.5 million Voyager miles fell out on that and nearly killed them. And then she said it used to be Thabo Mbeki's where he kept his things. And then she takes out Nelson Mandela's book, The Long Walk to Houghton. She's shocked that it's there, and then, of course, everybody has it. As she said, you've all got the book. Yes, have you read the book? You mean like the Bible? You've got those both books, so you haven't read either. You know, they're not there to keep the wind from blowing the door closed.
Exactly.
Okay. Then there's Thabo Mbeki's book, which is also a thick one. And I tell you something. In 3 years of doing that sketch, she then says to the audience, "Who here has read this book, The Dream Deferred?" Nobody. Nobody has read that book. And she says, "Well, you know, I haven't read it either." Well, let me do it in her voice. Hi, lieve aarde, you know, I never read this book either. I got to page 12, but then the government got rid of Thabo Mbeki as president. And I thought, dankie Vader, ek hoef nie die donderse boek klaar te lees nie. But you know, I think I'm making a mistake. As a citizen, shouldn't I know more about our leaders? Thabo Mbeki was our president for 7.5 years. He structured the pension of us, the education of our children, every single aspect of our lives. We know nothing because we're too lazy. Now, my point is this. We must do our homework. Julius Malema, a very interesting energy on the horizon of politics. Certainly somebody who needs to be listened to because everything he says needs to be heard.
Yeah.
The way he says it is another story. You might not like it. It doesn't matter. He has branded himself with such brilliance with that red beret, which is somebody else's idea anyway, but then Adolf Hitler did the same damn thing. We must know more about Ahang. We must know about the UDM. We must know about the IFP, but all these parties, and also the fact that there are good people in all our parties. You know, if there weren't good people in the ANC, we wouldn't be here. We would be Syria. We'd be a civil war. We are not a civil war.
Yeah.
We've still got freedom of expression. We argue. We are incredibly racist in many ways, but we absolutely understand the need to step back and apologize. And if we don't, then we must get what we get.
What we deserve.
You know, the klap moet kom. So I am very optimistic about the fact that we are a healthy democracy, that we still have got the speed wobbles because they'll never be perfect. Everybody's fingerprints are on that silver chalice of freedom. Also that the world of democracy, and we're thinking all over, democratic elected governments have found democratically accepted ways to demean democracy. Look what Putin is doing in Russia. And the Protection of State Information Act is definitely not democratic. It's up to us to fight it, and I intend to, because if that law becomes law after the election, they won't muck around before the election. You know, as Jacob Zuma says, I'll tell you in June. I won't tell you now, I'll tell you in June. You know, so if I make a big thing about Nkandla, and I've got a show for Evita called Nkandla Kosweti, you know, Babeti Kosweti, Nkandla Kosweti, where she gets blamed for everything. You know, she is responsible for spending 42 billion rand on the curtains. Okay. But if I do it under that law, I'm in trouble because I'm giving away a state secret.
Yeah.
And so they must be careful with Twitter, with internet, with radio, with all these extraordinary ways that we can communicate. No government must try and shut us up as they did during apartheid. It's not going to work. We're just going to make fools of them and drive them mad, which we intend to do.
How did Nelson Mandela's passing away affect you?
Hugely, hugely. It's to this minute, to this day, I think of him all the time. I think of him as part of me because he freed me from jail.
Yep.
Up to that point, it was politically correct to be a racist in South Africa. In fact, when you weren't a racist, you were breaking the Immorality Act. You went to jail. And suddenly there was this extraordinary man who came out of hell with a smile. I mean, I keep on saying, where would we have been if he'd come out angry?
Exactly.
Extraordinary. And the amazing timing of Madiba dying at a moment that he knew, I'm sure he held his breath for 2 days, turned around and switched off his machine. That was the time to go because we had forgotten the legacy. We have really enjoyed our honeymoon for so long that people really didn't. The young generation have grown up. Yes, they're old man and lovely, very sweet, and but then for 10 days when we were in sorrow and celebrating his life, the whole world, billions of people stopped what they were doing, listened to television, heard every single minute of the day his voice, with his extraordinary legacy, his tremendous sense of humor.
Yes.
Even that extraordinary opera in the soccer stadium in Johannesburg, where we had that idiot doing the sign language, doing the Marikana. I mean, just. And also, there were 90 heads of state there. Half of them should have been in The Hague for mass murder.
Exactly.
But somehow, there was a neutral territory. Nelson Mandela, neutral territory. Everybody is free to celebrate a life and maybe cash in, but that's also okay. And then they booed Zuma, and I keep on saying, oh, let it happen. This is what happens in a democracy. If you don't like being booed, resign, darling. Go home, float around in your fire hydrant, your fire reservoir. We don't have to boo, we just have to vote. But Nelson Mandela's extraordinary the reconciliation of the world. I mean, he really did something that has changed the history of the world in most ways. And I think he did it through humor. If you actually analyze how he formed a government with people who locked him up, how he wore that number 6 rugby jersey, how he had tea with Mrs. Verwoerd. Everything he did, which was exactly the opposite of what you thought he would do. With a smile. And crossed barriers where nobody would dare. He would talk to Palestinians and he would talk to Israelis with the same tone of voice. He would talk to Christians and Muslims with the same tone of voice. Atheists, homosexuals, everybody. He treated everybody like human beings with the right to listen and to argue. I mean, that whole thing is just extraordinary, So,
are we respecting his legacy?
Look, that's a personal
Or is that
thing.
something that comes in time, maybe?
Politicians today will never respect anything that makes them less wealthy and less powerful.
That's true.
But it's not about them. It really isn't about them. It's about us. In a democracy, it's not about the politicians. It's about the people. And we must keep that in mind.
Okay. Now listen, why are you in East London? First
Hello.
of all, there was the book
Why
last
am I in
night.
London? I have a novel called Panarama, which I brought along, and we had a little book launch last night. And it's set on Robben Island. About 2 school teachers who in 1987 were teaching the kids on Robben Island, and 2 white teachers, and they have to put up for the night a black young woman who's come to see her father who's dying in jail. So there's that confrontation of fear. This woman, this black woman who's a terrorist. Well, she's not actually. She's a woman like they are women, and they suddenly come to terms with so many things and recognize so many things, and lots of humor. And then also the second part of the story, or the party, the outer layer of the story is this young woman in 2010 coming back to the island with her 2 born-free sons, with their Blackberries and their Facebooks and their Googles. So that whole generation. And then I am doing 2 performances tonight and tomorrow at the Guild Theatre, 7:30, which is also fundraising for the Rotary Anns to raise money for the creche that they're building for children, which to me is
That's amazing.
the investment for the next government of South Africa. If we can educate our children, we are going to have the greatest education and democracy in the world. And the show is called An Audience with Piter Dirk Eish.
Now, I've read about that. That sounds like a challenge.
Yeah,
That can't be easy.
It's like pick a box.
Yes.
There are 14 boxes on stage, each with a number, and the audience will choose a number. I want number 6. Then I have to do what's in number 6. It could be Evita. It could be Grace Mugabe. It could be Desmond
Complete
Tutu.
with costume.
Everything is in there, and so I do it, and
Okay.
there comes the sketch. So I look forward to the show because I never know
What's gonna
happen, and also it's not just doing each one; it's like creating a whole recipe into a menu. You've got to start and then build up to certain things, link the sketches together, involve the audience's knowledge.
So every show is different, in other words.
You know, the knowledge of what happened in the news. Very few people know what's going on in this country because very few people listen to the news or read the news.
They watch Sky, or they watch CNN, or they escape.
They watch the Oscar Pistorius reality television show.
That's it.
Let me put it to you.
What do you think about that?
I think it's
thing?
appalling. I think it's absolutely outrageous. It's like pushing a crippled soul into an arena and watching the lions tear him to pieces. He is a very damaged man.
Yeah.
And he lost it. It's as simple as that. It's road rage. We know about road rage. It's not to say anything to say he can walk free. He knows what he's done.
Yeah.
It's killing him.
Yeah.
And to put him in a fishbowl, a commercially inspired fishbowl, people are making money out of that. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And now Dewani's coming back from London.
I see that,
So
yes.
I'm sure they're
Another
going to
one.
put him into a Cape Curry and see what they can do at his expense. That's not what it's about. You know, they say it's in the public's right to know. It's got nothing to do with the public. Law and justice know what they're doing.
You know what makes
what I
me
mean?
sad is how many women don't die violently.
Yes, I know. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
You know, do you have to have no
We don't
legs?
know about them.
No legs, a beautiful, sexy white face, and fame and fortune to be there, and what happens on a daily basis, which is
Yeah.
just so shocking. No, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. I'm sorry it happened, and I wish somebody would actually reverse it so that it doesn't happen. Look, if he's guilty, we want to know.
Yeah.
We will read about it. It's all there, but
Over and over.
to have to see everybody acting, they're all acting. They're all acting. And I know that there are some kids around who are not quite right in their heads for various reasons, who are looking at this and thinking, I'm going to kill my mom, my pa, I'm going to kill
Yeah.
somebody in the street. I will go to court, they will see me on television, I will have a movie made in Hollywood.
That's the whole celebrity.
It's
This whole
just
thing's about
nonsense. I'm sorry,
celebrity,
so
really.
that's wrong. We've done a really stupid thing there.
Okay.
So I hope it's over soon. I would like him to just say, you know, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of a mistake, but that doesn't mean I'm not guilty. I am guilty. Then it's over.
Yeah.
And it's, of course, he's also working for a Hollywood movie. I don't know, they all go mad.
Or the book, or
They all
whatever.
go mad.
Anyway, back to the stage now.
Yeah, back to
Yeah,
stage.
you,
Always
you
nice
were
on stage.
saying, you were talking about the boxes.
The boxes. So actually, that's the entertainment, and it's so important for me to underline the fact that humor is my weapon of mass distraction. You know, you will be guaranteed a night of extraordinary surprises because most of the things you laugh at are A, not particularly funny, and B, not things you particularly want to think about. And yet, when you confront your fear with laughter, you make it less fearful. It's still lethal, but you suddenly are in charge. You think, I know what that thing is. I'm not going to go there. It's like racism. Racism is only there because you don't know what's next door.
Why do we laugh at things that
All right,
aren't
let me
funny?
give you an example. Somebody stands behind the door when you go into a room and you don't know they're there, and they go, boo, you nearly, jy skrik your mouth weg, you know. And then you see it's somebody you know, and you go, ah, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
Now, it's that, ha, ha, ha. It's that huge relief to know that it's not a
Real.
20-foot monster that's going to eat you. It's actually something that can be solved if we just confront it. It's a complicated question, and it's a very simplified answer, but I think it does help. I think humor has been an extraordinary therapy. Not laughing at people, but laughing with people, and at people who deserve to be laughed at. I mean, Zuma and his Nkandla will go down in history as one of the jokers of the century, until he gets out of it. And he's a very intelligent, very charismatic man. I never want to demean people who are in my show because that's too easy. I have the power to do it on stage, you know. But if you can actually underline the stupidity of action, of politicians especially, it's healthy to do it because we put them there.
I could talk to you all afternoon.
Yeah.
We'll have to do this in serial form. They haven't told me to stop yet. Is there anybody that you won't do? Any character?
Well, you know, there are many people. You know, it's politicians are usually the people, and the famous are the ones. I need to do people that the audience recognize. But I have created many characters that they don't know who they are, but they know the type of person I'm talking about, and
Like
they
Mrs.
are my
Peterson.
favorite. The like?
Mrs. Peterson.
Like Mrs. Peterson. Like Mrs. Peterson, like Nelson's Warder. I do Nelson's Warder, who used to look after the plants on Robben Island. And I do Benny, who is a big issue seller in Cape Town who works with street children. But each character then brings in an aspect of our structures that I personally don't think I have the right to comment on. It's not for me to tell you what you must think about this issue. Let me show you a person which is probably familiar. Oh my gosh, I know somebody like that. And
Or you might see yourself.
This is also true. So it's that's where I find the balance. I try not to make speeches, and that's one lesson I've learned. Say less, listen more. Listen to your audience as well. Sometimes I find out that the audience is not quite sure where I am, because then I know they haven't actually clicked into that issue, and then I move on.
Okay.
Because I can do that.
Have you had any embarrassing moments?
Oh, every now and then.
Lots.
Oh, not on stage. My brook once fell down, and I kept it in. It got such a laugh, I kept it in for the next night. My brook fell down. No, I mean, it's just, the lights, sometimes Eskom switches off in the middle of a show.
Yeah.
You've got to get the audience not to panic. No, it's my job, and if something goes wrong, I must make it right. I had much more sort of tension in the old South Africa when I got death threats.
Yes.
But I got them on my answering phone. I think I was the first one to have an answering machine. And I'd have people suddenly, the voice would say, hello, this is Pieter Dirk Eish here. I'm not here, just leave a message. And then, listen, Eish, listen, you bloody communist, you bloody hang on, man, I can't talk in these machines. Listen, I just want to say to you, when we get you, we're going to go, I go click. And of course, I'd take that recording and put it on stage the next night. And the audience would scream with laughter. And I would laugh with them. And the moment you laugh with them, at that, he's not going to frighten me in the next call. So it was a therapy as well. So really, truly, I mean, it's my choice. I love doing this. It's not the most publicly supported thing in the world. Theatre is not full. But I go to schools with entertainment as well. And I say to if the kids are interested, the theatre is there. And it's there are two things that are live in the world: theatre and church. And church has got one up on theatre, because the church says, if you don't come to church, you go to hell. I say, if you don't come to the live theatre, you stay sane.
Pieter Dirk Eish, can I throw a few names at you? Just for our listeners. Come on, give them a preview, short preview of the show. For instance,
Desmond Tutu.
Desmond Tutu, okay.
Thank you very much, my dears. Always remember, love your enemy, it'll ruin his reputation. And then Nelson Mandela. Peter, where is Evita? That's actually what he said to me when I met him the first time. And I thought, oh my gosh, I hope he knows.
But he did. One more. Julius Malema.
No, I don't do him.
You don't do him?
No,
okay.
I don't like him that much to do him. It's a waste of time. But I do the beret. I'd rather have the beret on stage. That brings the house down. Except when he did say, remember when Winnie Mandela wasn't taking her medication and she put her arms around Julius Malema and said, this is the new Mandela. And then he said, I am the new Mandela. You will now treat me like you treated Nelson Mandela. And I thought, gosh, what a good idea. Let's start with 27 years in jail.
Good idea. Listen, Guild Theatre tonight. The time is 7:30. There we go. Tickets are still available?
Still available, and they're selling my little novel in the foyer. And if people want to buy it, I will be signing it for them after the show.
Okay.
Good.
One last question. What do you want to be remembered for one day?
Survival.
Survival?
Sure. Against all odds.
Okay.
And odds are the operative word here.
And you've done that. Pieter Dirk Eish, an absolute pleasure, really.
Thank you.
An inspiration. A national treasure you are.
Daze.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All the best.